Welcome back to the Sports Zone. Let's get back to the discussion.
We've been talking about domestic violence and what's going on out in our work and world, and I have Dr. Gordon on the line. Dr. Gordon, welcome to the show. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, glad to be here. Thank you for getting in touch with me.
Absolutely, absolutely. What's your take on all this, Doc?
First of all, it's interesting that I've been involved with domestic violence for over 20 years. I worked on the original task force here in Florida that brought that law on the book, and my company, Interventions, was the first state-certified treatment provider. It's not an easy question. The domestic violence legislation for the state of Florida overall is failing because the victims will not prosecute against their partners. And a lot of logic goes to that, because when it gets to the courtroom, and you have a prosecutor, the prosecutor depends on that victim to come forward and state what happened. Here in Hillsborough County, we have a 96% no-show rate for the victims into the courthouse when the allegations and police reports are pertinent to the family and there's no outside observation. Now, that's what makes this case different when you talk about the case that occurred, because everybody's seen the elevator film, and everybody's seen the outrageousness, the power, the force, the woman laying on the floor. So now we have something outside that's peering into the privacy of the home. So when you have a 96% no-show rate, which means, and by the way, I'm at my clinic today. I've done almost 11,000 men through my program since I started doing this. And the truth is that there is certain financial worries and certain other issues that come to bear when the wife is testifying against the husband as she thinks about her livelihood, the kids, how I put food on the table. When you transfer over into professional sports, or you talked before, I was listening to you, medicine or other high-paying fields, there is a great deal of problems when it comes to the labeling that has to do with domestic violence. You're a batterer. Even here, my program, you look me up in the 13th Judicial District, you'll see I am listed as a batterer intervention program. And when my people come in that are being charged with this, they fill out paperwork that's for batterers. Okay, and then we have the court system, of course, where the batterer appears before the judge, and the process is all there. I've had several professional football players come through my different programs. In this particular case, when you have outside observation and you have video of something that occurred, then those cases may go forward because we have a lot of pressure, a lot of value that the prosecutor would have to prove that the incident occurred, even if the victim may not testify. Yes, I have doctors and lawyers and airline pilots, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When you ask me, are these people overall impacted in their professional careers? Yes and no. It just depends. There's so much more that goes into this. And I'll tell you where we've done things differently in here in Hillsborough County. Now we're finding out that in the incident of the domestic violence in the household, that over 60% of them had children in the household. So even as the victim is no longer showing up and the prosecutor has no case, Child Protective Services is doing an investigation and found out that there are children in the household, and they're turning those cases over. In this case, here in Hillsborough, I think it's Eckerd Community Alliance, where now we're coming up with case plans that are forcing the parents to go into some type of psychoeducational program, or there's a threat of you may lose the children. They're going to be placed with with someone else to care for them until you've shown to us that you've done something to intervene into this troubled relationship. We use the word domestic violence. It's a tough word because people are labeled, and they're labeled forever in the judicial system. And yet, we tend to think as hit, strike, or punch as being the only thing we're worried about. And the truth is, most of the people that I work with, it's not just the hit, strike, or punch. It's the emotional abuse that goes on every day and accumulates year after year, so that these relationships are toxic, and the kids are raised in these households. This particular video is the video of the woman getting struck and she's laying on the ground. But then you have to wonder to yourself, well, how many times did this happen before where there was no video, where where the police weren't called?
Let me ask you a question, Gordon, about that, because I want to keep my train of thought here, and you're better at that than I. How many out of 11,000 people that you've counseled, okay, how many were repeat offenders? Or what's the percentage of repeat offenders when they do get counseling and anger management and domestic management?
That's a really difficult question, and I'm going to say that usually it's about 40% that I get that are repeat. But understand something. They got to me because something occurred to force them into the system. I had a guy last week that had 2 arrests last year, 2 arrests this year, but he's only here now because the last arrest, which of course wasn't prosecuted because the victim didn't show up, but in this police report, it was substantiated that there were kids present in the household. So now I get to intervene. You follow that? And he says to me, he says, look, I want my kids back. I'll do anything to get my kids back. So this guy has had 4 events in 2 years, but this is the first time I get to see him.
Yeah. Well, we don't have enough jails to really house these type of guys, or I guarantee they'd have a change of doing these things. There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, their incarceration does, in a crazy way, make rehabilitation, or if you get to people young enough to make them realize from right and wrong and what they're doing to themselves and society, it changes everything. Here's one other thing, and I want you to comment on it, Doc. San Francisco 49ers, I don't know if you heard about this story. It was kind of just very brief. The play-by-play announcer on the radio broadcast, he does a show also, and he says, I don't know how this lady, okay, Janae Rice, would marry the man after she gets punched a month later, okay, and continue to back him up. For him saying that, the San Francisco 49ers suspended him for 2 games. Okay, and Ray McDonald, left tackle for the San Francisco 49ers, right now, will play this Sunday. He's under investigation for domestic abuse, but he's playing. What are we doing in society to where when you say something, Doc, you get in more trouble than if you do something physical? It's pretty messed up. Go ahead.
You know, this is funny because what we're talking about is he has not done his homework to even understand this notion of domestic violence in women. You know, psychologically speaking, there's something out there called battered women syndrome. There's also something called PTSD. I mean, these are mental health issues that are attributed to long-term exposure to abuse. So when a person speaks off the hip, they really don't understand what they're talking about because they're trying to put a logic train to a normal function relationship that doesn't have within it any domestic violence or any emotional violence. And so, yeah, everybody's taking a swing at him because he really didn't understand what he was talking about. You know, the idea that he's trying to rationalize and that why, my God, if this happened to you, then how can you move forward to consummate the marriage? Yeah. And yet he's trying to use a rational mind with a person that has never been abused, maybe has no mental health disorder. And so they're taking a swing at him because they're saying, how can you be so insensitive? How can you not understand that there's more to this woman than that, more to this woman than just that? Right.
No, you're right, Doc. But did he deserve 2 games from the San Francisco 49ers because they said he wasn't being sensitive?
These are political questions that, you know, as time goes by, and we start to see what happens to him for making those actions, people will step back and say, oh, shucks, we better not do that again. Let's do it this way. And they'll formalize a process by which they start to understand what's going on.
You're getting in more trouble for the First Amendment not being upheld than you do for knocking somebody out. How much does that make sense, Doc?
You know, and the idea about the system, is it fair? No. Is it legal? I guess we're going to figure that out as they argue this point through the different levels of the organization and the court system.
Right. It's not justice, that's for sure. It might be legal, and that's the problem.
You know, but there's not a guy that comes by that's been arrested for domestic violence that I don't look here, and I look him in the eye and I say, you know, the system is very legal. You're more worried about whether it's fair or not, and I think you need to forget that for right now.
Yeah. Well, you know, Doc, some things need to change. Let's talk a little bit about sports. I know you're a little bit of a sports fan. What do you think about the Bucs this week?
You know, just you know, there's so much change. I just want to see consistency. You know, I just need to see consistency, and that just, it's so disheartening. And I get very weighted down that I want to see people that are consistently performing, that are making plays. You know, I feel like at times I don't want to watch. Let me watch the recording after I know what happened, so I don't get too upset.
I hear you exactly. Well, Doc, I want to thank you for coming on the show and just letting
Welcome.
people know.
I'm at my clinic now, and I took a break from one of my classes, so I've got to go back to work. But anytime you need anything about this, I have a book out there. Type in my name, Gordon Pilet, and anger. You can type it in on Google, Amazon.com. It's called How to Control Anger Before It Controls You. I'm real easy to find. Just put my name in the internet and I'll come right up.
Absolutely. I want to thank Michael Peter for getting you to me to discuss this from the Internet Radio Network. You can check him out on IRN and listen to the radio off your computer or your iPhone on IRN. Thanks, Doc.
You got a great show. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir. You take care and have a wonderful day.